everyone, I'm Rosie and welcome to my town in Australia, Terrigal. It's a small beachside town about 2 hours north of Sydney, and it's well known for its beautiful weather, beautiful beach. So welcome to Terrigal Beachfront. It's a beautiful stretch of golden sand right in front of all the shops and the cafes. Hi everyone, I'm Rosie and I'm an English girl living in Australia. I'm currently living in a small beachside town called Terrigal, which is 2 hours north of Sydney and is one of the towns that makes up the central coast of New South Wales. The coast stretches from Newcastle at its most northern point right down to the northern beaches of Sydney. The coast itself is made up of 87 kilometres worth of beaches, broken up by national park and characterful little beachside towns like mine. The rest of the world has some very interesting beliefs on what Australia is like. Some of them are true, yes, it does get very hot in summer here, but some of them couldn't be further from the truth. Where I'm living, I haven't seen a single snake, crocodile or dangerous spider since I've been here. Australia itself is an enormous continent. In fact, it's 600 kilometres wider than the moon. Sydney itself is slap bang in between Melbourne and Brisbane, and although they look very close together on a map, if you were to drive to one of them, it would take well over 10 hours. Australia's mainland is made up of 6 separate states. Each state has a capital city ranging in size from as small as 426,000 people, as is the case with Canberra, right up to well over 5 million people, as is the case with Sydney. Canberra, the smallest of these cities, is Australia's custom-built capital city. It was established in 1913 specifically to be the governing city of Australia. It's home to the Houses of Parliament, or Parliament House, and is also home to the British Queen's representative, the Governor-General. The next city is Adelaide, which is home to around 1.3 million people, and it's based in southern Australia. It was the only city not settled by convicts when the British sent a lot of their prisoners across to Australia. And these free settlers, as they were called, were very proud of the fact that their crime rates in Adelaide were so low that they didn't build a prison in the city until 1841. And this was when a lot of settlers realised that they could take advantage of the lack of police enforcement, and the city suddenly realised that they did need some kind of police force. It's also nicknamed the 20-minute city because everything in it is only 20 minutes away. This makes sense given that the size of the city is only just over 3,000 square kilometres compared to Sydney's 12,000 square kilometres, as well as all the rail and transport links being really so good. The next largest city is Perth, which is based in Western Australia and has a population of just over 2 million. It is where you'd get off the world's longest direct flight. You can fly from London to Perth non-stop in 17 hours. WA, or Western Australia, is also where much of the mining and valuable production comes from in Australia. So many of the Australian gold and diamond mines are located here, as well as pearl producers. It makes sense then that it's got the highest concentration of self-made millionaires in all of Australia. The next biggest city is Brisbane, which is located in Queensland, which is on the east coast of Australia and is home to around 2.5 million people. 32% of this population was born overseas, so it's considered quite a global city. It's 2 hours from the famous Byron Bay, but if you do decide to go there from Brisbane in the middle of summer, be careful because you might get there an hour after you left. Why is this? Because on the Queensland border during daylight savings time, the New South Wales is actually an hour ahead of Queensland. So when you cross the border to get to Byron Bay, you'll find yourself going back in time. The next biggest city is Melbourne, which is located in Victoria on the south coast of Australia. The population here is around 4.9 million people, and it was actually the original capital city of Australia between 1901 and 1927, before Canberra was established. It's also got the highest number of cafes and restaurants for its population of any city in the world. And it's also very well known for its arts and culture, its markets, and all sorts of cultural events. So it's a really fun city to visit if you get the chance. And then the largest city, and probably one of the most famous Australian cities, is Sydney. And it's got a population of well over 5 million people. It's located in New South Wales, about 2 hours from me, and it's a pretty beautiful city. It's surrounded by around 100 beaches, and it's also got the deepest natural harbour in the world of 504,000 megalitres, if you know what that is. It's obviously famous for the Sydney Opera House and the Sydney Harbour Bridge, which host the annual New Year's Eve fireworks. It's also famous for the 2000 Olympics, which coincidentally is also the postcode if you live in Sydney. It's well known that Australia has a very, very strong economy, and this is due to the fact that they export a lot of their products that they produce. One product that they're well known for is diamond mining. And as I mentioned before, this is mainly located in Western Australia. The Argyle mine that's located there is the second largest in the world for diamond mining, and it produces 95% of Australia's diamond output, which is around 14.2 million carats per year. Argyle mine is also known for its pink and red diamonds. However, what is less known is that Australia is the world's leading coal exporter. Coal is mined in New South Wales, Queensland and Victoria, and 54% of it is exported, mainly to Eastern Asia. But I didn't know that coal was mined in New South Wales. The other main export from Australia is farming products. So 60% of the farm products that are produced in Australia are exported. The farming industry employs well over 325,000 people, making it 155 billion Australian dollars annually. If you come to Australia on a working holiday visa and you wish to extend it, one of the criteria is that you have to undertake farm work in rural Australia at some point during your travels. So be prepared for that if you're thinking of coming over. The main products farmed in Australia are cattle, wheat, fruit and vegetables, and wool. Here in New South Wales. Most of the animals that people associate with Australia, like the dangerous ones, live up in the Northern Territory where the climate is a lot more tropical. Here in New South Wales, where the temperatures are milder, you get more marsupials and birds, which are a bit more friendly, and some of them are even cute. Where I used to live, we had a possum that would knock on the door every night and ask for a carrot, and she was so tame sometimes she'd let you pet her, though not all the animals here are like that. You also get woken up every morning. You don't need an alarm clock. The kookaburras will do that for you with their iconic call, and they'll wake you up bang on 6 o'clock. You've also got the crowned cockatoos, which are beautiful white birds with a yellow plumage. They're very intelligent and will play with anything you leave out in your garden. So sport is a huge part of life here in Australia. It dates back to the colonial times where settlers would compete against each other in games between towns. Nowadays, it's professional sport that's followed, the most popular being cricket and Aussie rules football, which is technically rugby, but with different rules. There's also rugby league, which is also called footy, and rugby union. They also play a lot of soccer. Our local team here is the Central Coast Mariners, who Usain Bolt actually used to play for a few years ago. Australia is also famous for the Melbourne Cup, for the horse racing, and the America's Cup for the sailing. Surfing is also a huge sport here in Australia. Makes sense considering there's so many beaches. And it's actually home to 3 of the stops on the World Surf League Championship Tour in Margaret River in Western Australia, Bells Beach in Victoria, and the Gold Coast in Queensland. Considering how enormous Australia is, it's got one of the lowest population densities in the world. This is because most of the centre of Australia is arid desert, so the population tend to live near the beaches on the east coast and south coast. America, by comparison, is only 2 million square kilometres bigger than Australia. But while Australia only has a population of 25 million, the States has a population of over 328 million people. The most shocking comparison comes with my home country of the UK. While the UK only has a very small size of 242,000 kilometres, it has over double the population of Australia at 66.6 million people. As I mentioned before, the temperatures and the climate in Australia can vary from state to state. In the Northern Territory, the climate is very much similar to that of Indonesia, where the temperatures rarely dip below 24 degrees and it's humid and warm all year round. However, further south, in New South Wales or Victoria, the temperature tends to fluctuate with the seasons a lot more. In the summer, it can hit the mid to high 40s, especially right on the coast. But in winter, it can get as cold as 12 degrees or even single digits at night in the midwinter. One interesting fact about Australia that not many people know is that it has a full ski season running from May to September. The larger resorts are based on the snowy mountains in the Mount Kosciuszko National Park in New South Wales. This is about a 6 to 7 hour drive from the Central Coast, so if you're really keen and get up nice and early, you can actually surf first thing in the morning and do the drive and be on the snow in the afternoon. It gets around 2 metres of snow every year, and they're fully functional resorts with chairlifts, on-mountain accommodation, everything. The terrain is a bit more like Scandinavia, think rolling hills rather than steep alpine terrain like the European Alps or the American Rockies, but it's still a lot of fun. You may have heard on the news that Australia suffered some catastrophic bushfires recently. Bushfires are quite normal in Australia. They're started by lightning storms and they're a natural process to manage the ecological landscape. However, 2019 and 2020 saw some of the worst that Australia's ever seen. By January 2020, these fires were burning in every single state in Australia, but New South Wales was the worst affected, with 25 deaths and over 2,500 lives lost. The biggest impact was on the animal population, where it's estimated that 1 billion animals have died as a result of the bushfires. This is worrying, as experts believe that many species of animals have actually gone extinct as a result of this disaster. So it's pretty devastating. Additionally, the smoke cloud that was emitted by these fires was so bad that you could see it from space, and NASA reported that it travelled across to New Zealand, even to the South Island, where locals in Dunedin reported back that they could see hazy orange skies and the smell of smoke in the air. The good news is that the Australian and the global response to these fires was incredible. Well over $60 million Australian was donated to WIRES, which is the wildlife rescue charity here in Australia, to help with the bushfire recovery and support the animals that did survive and help with the rehabilitation and breeding programs to get these populations back up to how they were before. Additionally, internationally, a lot of countries sent military and aid support over to Australia to help with the clear up and to help families affected and those who'd lost their homes. So while it was a very, very sad and very devastating disaster, it was lovely to see Australia and the world come together to help Australia recover. So a little bit about where I'm based. Terrigal is just a small beachside town that makes up the Central Coast. It's got a population of around 11,500, so it's quite busy, and the population gets even busier on weekends when a lot of people from Sydney come up for weekend breaks in the sunshine by the beach. It's not surprising considering there's so many beaches within a 5-10 minute drive, including Terrigal, which is obviously right on the front. You've also got Avoca, Spoon Bay, Wamberal and Foresters Beach, super close. There's a lot of sports and activities going on here. Regularly you see weekends kids playing football and soccer. There's a lot of diving and snorkeling, stand-up paddle boarding, all that sort of thing. They recently sunk the HMAS Adelaide off the coast to use as a diving wreck. There's heaps of fishing and all sorts of water sports, and most sports and activities are outside because the weather's usually pretty good. It doesn't tend to dip below 15 degrees during the winter, which are the months of May to October, and it tends to sort of stick around 25 degrees even in high summer. Terrigal is great if you want to come and spend time exploring the cafes and bars and restaurants. It's a very social place and very dog friendly. While Terrigal Beach is a no dog beach, Avoca is the best place to go to let your dog have a run. Most of the accommodation is dog friendly too, and all the bars and cafes welcome them. So thank you so much for watching my video about Australia, New South Wales and the Central Coast. I hope you enjoyed it and you learnt a few facts that you didn't already know. If you're planning to come to Australia for a trip, I highly recommend it, and get out there and explore everything that Australia has to offer. Take care. I was Rosie reporting on Terrigal in Australia.